let's talk about it. I want to talk about the cheating era. Like everything that I've you got to set the story straight because I didn't play competitive back then, but every single thing I read about competitive Magic in the 90s was like it was rampant cheating. If you weren't cheating, you weren't trying hard enough. It was just like it was normalized and it was just like the wild wild west out there. Like is that a factual statement or is it something else?
So it's weird because in some ways, how would I know? Because I think that because we very early on, I mean, you can find very early like Usenet posts from me and David Price talking about cheating, encouraging people to, um, essentially rat out cheaters, let people know who the cheaters were. Um, People knew that we would not stand for it and we were trying to get rid of it. So I literally think there were just groups of people who they all knew each other cheated, but they just wouldn't tell us, right? And there wasn't sophisticated judging. At times, it almost felt like, obviously, like Mark Rosewater has gotten a lot of flack for people think he essentially like ignored Mike Long cheating because he wanted like a WWF style villain or something.
Like a heel
Um,
or a
like a
villain or
heel,
something? Yeah,
exactly. And I don't
yeah.
know exact. I know Mark's talked about it at length, so I don't want to like put words in his mouth or whatever. But um, so in some ways, like I could only know what was happening in my matches. I mean, I
Sure. Your
and
reality. Yeah.
and people weren't going to cheat against me because they might get caught. So they're just. I remember I did what I went through all the Grand Prix results at some point for a handful of players, and the win rate. So it used to be we would be like the normal Grand Prix I think was 9 rounds day one, but all the like pro players would have 3 buys, so we wouldn't start playing till round four. The win rate for people who I suspected were cheaters in rounds like four, five, six, seven was just crazy. Like they just never lost. Like even in sealed deck, just never lose. And it was just not possible. Like, I was winning 85% of my rounds, four, five, six matches. They were winning like 97% of their round four, five. Like they just never lost.
Basically
And
100%. Yeah.
and I think that that's what people did. They just, if they played against Joe Schmo in round five, they just weren't going to lose. And sometimes I did. Uh, Obviously Mike Long, the cheating stories just never stop with him. There's a million of them. Um, I mean, he won a pro tour, cheated in the finals on camera. There's a whole, yeah, there was a lot of cheating, and it was hard to know the extent of it, uh, and it was frustrating. And every once in a while, I, I do. There have been times over the past few years where like I still just get so angry about it. Um,
Like what happens? Something gets brought up or
oh,
just
here's
a
a
new
good
cheat
example.
happens or
So, what's his name? Dan Lanthier? Is that his name? Canadian player, won a couple Grand Prix. I think that's his name. I don't want to say
I'm not
the
familiar.
wrong player's
No.
name. Anyway, people know who I'm
No.
talking about. I think that's his name. Um, if I have it wrong, I apologize to whoever that is. Anyway, Canadian player he's always fine, but he won like I want to say he won 2 Grand Prix in a very short period of time, and this was like during the period where I was going to a lot of Grand Prix, and I was getting a lot of like 11 and fours, and just like trying really hard and being like, I can't believe I'm just not top any of these Grand Prix. I was during the Hall of Fame stuff too, so I had a lot of that frustration, but I was just like, maybe I just suck. Like, how the hell does this guy have two? How does this guy win 2 Grand Prix? I can't even make top eight. Like, I must be terrible. And then a few months later, and this was like a big thing on Twitter, he got caught on camera blatantly cheating in like a store tournament for like a box. And I just sort of lost it. I was like, I spent months of my life like depressed because this guy won 2 Grand Prix
Hmm.
and I didn't. And it turns out he's just a fucking cheater. Like I was so mad. Like it really
Hmm.
made me just never want to play Magic again. And I know that it was like an overreaction, but it just hit me so hard. It just made it seem so pointless that like even now, like
You still get angry
I,
thinking about it.
I'm getting on a plane, like flying across the country, go 11-4, and like I'm upset because some other guy top eight it again. And it just turns out he was cheating. The guy who in Europe, whose name I don't remember, who wrote the big apology, he won so many grand, he made top eight at like so many
Yeah.
Grand Prix, and it just turns out he was just mana weaving the whole time. Like, okay, I guess. So it's just very frustrating to devote your life to something,
Hmm.
not do as well as you want, benchmark yourself to people where you're like, I feel like I should be doing as well as this person,
Hmm.
become essentially become unhappy because of it, and then find out the whole thing was bullshit. It was not. So a couple of those have really angered me.
Yeah.
At the times where I was like had spending a lot of time on Magic and not being half that done. Like, yeah, to have that like thrown in your face was upsetting. But yeah, back then it turns out just a lot of people were cheating. Like if you look at the Grand Prix top eights from back then, it's like a lot of people who now people think cheated. Even people who I consider friends now, I think they did things back then that maybe they didn't really understand were cheating, or maybe they thought everybody
Hmm.
did it, or the rules didn't really prevent it. Things
That's
like
what I
point.
wanted to ask about. Like was it just a culture where it just like it just felt like you kind of someone told me. I'm not saying it was a pro player, but he said he played Magic in the '90s. It felt like he had to like cheat because he felt like everyone was cheating. So it's kind of like steroids in baseball. If you're not doing it, then you're just behind. That kind of thing.
Uh, yeah, maybe that is just what was happening, and we were just dumb. I mean,
I don't know about dumb.
well,
I mean,
right.
it's
Well, we were
just
whatever. We were
having
putting ourselves
integrity.
at disadvantage. Right. Why? Part of the problem is just that people were young. People were really young,
Yeah,
and
young. Plus, there's money on the line. Plus,
right.
there's lax
So
judging, as you
when you
mentioned.
were when
So
you were 16 or 17 years old, and you were trying to fly across the country to play Magic, or even just drive a few hours to pay $50 to enter a tournament, and maybe you're relying on your parents to borrow their car or for gas money. If you don't win money in the tournament, you might not be able to go to the tournament the next week or something, right?
mhm.
Like it was a lot different, especially because like the hobby was younger and people didn't necessarily know that their cards were going to be worth $500 one day, and maybe the whole
Yeah,
thing just felt
nobody knew.
like a more pointless endeavor. And it's not, and it's never been cheap. It's never been a cheap hobby, right? Like,
Mhm.
uh, and people who are young make bad decisions, and they uh, are better at maybe justifying it, or if they're off, it's a lot. Obviously, peer pressure is a much bigger deal when you're younger. So if everyone else is doing it, you just do it too.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, right. If we looked at the early DCI scores or whatever they're called, DCI rankings, or there's a whole era of top eights. Yeah, there are a lot of cheaters, and a lot of
Mhm.
them really didn't like us. We didn't like them,
Mhm.
and and it was difficult to do anything about it because you needed a lot of judges, and you need the judges to know what to look for. Like, it took a long time to educate people on like the double nickel, which is what the pile shuffling thing is, where if you just
Yeah.
separate lands and spells and then just deal into
Yeah.
piles,
That's
it's
that's not okay. Yeah.
right.
Mana weaving is not
Um,
okay. Yeah. There's
uh,
it's not like there's like different shades of cheating where that's
right.
okay.
And they're like
So
early stages of some early Magic rules actually made cheating easier, like no sleeves. They didn't think that like sleeves.
yeah, different
Yeah,
sets, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was pretty vicious.
Mm.
Yeah, the cheating was frustrating, and we just tried to stop it, but we didn't have a real mechanism to stop it. And us being so vocally anti-cheater, like I said, it kind of cut us off from really knowing what was going on because people just, yeah, they didn't want.
Yeah, I guess you
Yeah.
couldn't like work the system from within if
Right.
you because you were doing that.
Everyone was so young back then that we were also on the older side, even though we were only like 21 or whatever. There was still a lot. That's back when Pro Tour top eights were way more likely to have a teenager in them than they are now. Things were a little different.
Sure.
There were some older
Yeah.
people, but not, Magic didn't start. So, unless they started playing Magic when they were 30, they couldn't be Magic players in 1997. So yeah, we had some people we had very bad, contentious relationships with. There's random Pro Tour stories I have of the people trying to do shady things against me, and I remember I played Ryan Fuller, very famous Canadian Magic cheater, just a really unpleasant, terrible person. He had a little kind of a group of people who hung out who I just thought were all basically just thieves because they were just obviously cheating. I played him at the Pro Tour that Dave won, the Tempest block. But in that set, the Wrath of God in Tempest is called the Winds of Wrath. It only destroys unenchanted creatures. So if your creature has an unholy strength on it, your creature nothing happens to it, right? So our deck had giant strength in it, which is +2/+2 for 2 red, because not only was it just kind of good in our deck, but it protected you from the Wrath of God. So I remember when I played him in the tournament, I think I had out a creature maybe with maybe even 2 giant strengths on it. I had a giant strength creature in play that was killing him, and he just cast Winds of Wrath, and I was like, all right.
Cool, bro.
Yeah. And I was like, did he think this is gonna work? And if I had, it's just stuff yeah. So
probably just try to make you bin it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if I had binned it, I'm sure. I mean, it's possible that he knew he was losing that game, so he was just doing it to mess with me because he knew I wasn't gonna bin it. But that's the kind of thing but against random Joe Schmo in round 4, they bin it. He just goes on with his life. Okay, your creature's dead. And that was very common. But the rules were also a lot less clear back then about what you were responsible for. Like if you're
your triggers, their triggers, that kind of thing. Like
so
you have now.
if they binned their creature that wasn't supposed to die, the rules were not clear on what your responsibilities were. There's a lot of weird stuff like that, and
also lighter punishments, right? Like if you got caught, you just like roll back or something. Like there's no, or were there infractions already, or maybe there were but not well enforced.
So I would say back then, it was really volatile because the first. Right. So at first you could kind of just get away with a lot of stuff, and then when they finally started listening to us and kind of put in a first set of infractions, I think they were actually too harsh, where sort of well, did you know the David Mills Pro Tour Finals story?
I do not, and listeners may not.
Yeah.
You could probably definitely
at the Pro Tour LA, one of the draft tournaments, there's a player named David Mills, who was definitely, I don't know if David Mills is a cheater, but he was on Team Tongo Nation, which was Mike Long and a bunch of people who I definitely think were cheaters.
Associated with cheaters. Okay.
Yeah. But he essentially got DQ'd in a Pro Tour Finals for some reason for this tournament, they basically said you had to it was something really crazy. You had to tap your lands. It was something about the way you had to tap your lands and announce spells.
Announcing spells. I don't know if I didn't know it was with Mills, but there was some DQ based on that.
So I don't remember what exactly they wanted us to do. And for most people, that was just the way they naturally played Magic already. But for him, it was not. And he got DQ'd in the finals. That's how Tommy Hovey won his second Pro Tour, was against a DQ in the finals for some dumb reason. But to be honest, part of the reason that rule was instituted was because of Justin Schneider, who his brother Brian, I'm friends with, great guy. They are from Virginia and we're friends with Mike Long. Justin Schneider was one of the, youngest, most prolific cheaters in Magic history. He would do. I played against him. He would do things like he would have like 9 lands, tap all 9 lands, untap all 9 lands, tap all 9 lands, untap. Then he would finally tap them all, put them in a big pile, and cast 2 5 casting cost spells. Like, they would do stuff like this all the time. So I think the reason this rule was instituted was because of the people David Mills associated with doing stuff like this. It was kind of instituted so that other people were like actually able to track that your spells and the lands you were tapping made sense together. Yeah, there's tons of stories. Someone just told me a story. It might have been Brian Hacker telling me a story just recently where at the Mirage pre-release Pro Tour, I think, where his opponent had 10 lands and tapped them all, just put them in a pile and said, Karavix torch you for 10. And Brian's just like, you only have 10 lands. Like, just stuff like that used to happen all the time. So that's why that rule was instituted. But there was definitely, we've had that from time to time in Magic, where every once in a while there's just a rule that's like too punitive and it like doesn't make sense, and then they have to like roll it back. How to deal with Magic is hard to keep track of, and it kind of stinks that sometimes live tournaments just have important matches that the rules were not enforced, or somebody it's just hard to keep track of. I remember at the Grand Prix Orlando, the Aether Revolt Grand Prix, and I had played probably more of that set than anyone in the room. And I remember who was I playing? Doesn't matter. I feel like I know who it was though. I didn't attack with a frontline rebel. Has to attack each turn. No one in the world had cast more frontline rebels than me. Like, literally, I was tweeting about frontline rebel constantly. No one on Earth had cast that card in Magic Online more than I had. And then when I got to a live tournament, I forgot I had to attack every turn. So it's just really hard to.
Magic Online does it for you as well.
Yeah, it's just really hard to remember to keep track of the game, and because of that. It's also really hard to know when someone did it on purpose and when they didn't, and cheating is just always been a problem. Getting the rules right where they punish cheaters, prevent cheating, but punish honest mistakes to like the right extent.
The whole unintended consequences kind of deal.
Yeah, it's very tough. I mean, the tracking people from tournament to tournament is a very good strategy, because then you can kind of like get a sense of like, is this person making too many accidental mistakes? Is this person pushing things? But in the one match though, you just don't know. You just don't know. You don't. It's not going to make you feel better when you find out that they got DQ'd a month later. You're like, well, okay, well, I flew to California and lost to them. So I don't feel, it doesn't help me. I don't get my plane ticket back because they got banned.
Can't roll that back.
Yeah. So cheating was it was annoying, and definitely made things less friendly for us at times. The Magic Invitational, which is how we got Meddling Mage. That was supposed to be a fun tournament every year, but there would always be like 1 or 2 or 3 people who I just thought were cheaters in that tournament, and it made it really unpleasant. Like, you go to a tournament that's like supposed to be a good time, and it just really just took the fun out of it. Um, so in the tournament where that I won to I beat John in the finals and got to make Meddling Mage. Late in that tournament, I was actually fighting for the final spot with Mike Long. So I think maybe John was far. I don't remember the exact standings, but I just got so obsessed with not letting Mike Long beat me. Like I just couldn't. I really
It's not about winning, but it's about not losing to Mike Long.
right. But I ended up rules lawyering Zvi really, really viciously in that tournament, and I feel bad about it. Um,
Because you just wanted to have a certain standard that
no,
regardless
because
of who you're
I
playing.
just wanted to beat Mike, and I was like, if I lose, I think maybe Zvi was like a match behind us.
Oh, I see.
So,
You needed to get to Mike the end boss, so you needed
so
to.
I just needed to
Yeah.
stay ahead of Mike, and I was like, well, if Zvi beats me and then Mike wins, now he's tied with us or ahead of us. I just couldn't. I just went into like full blown like angry tournament mode because I was in contention with someone who I disliked so much. Um, so yeah, so then I ended up doing something that the exact thing that I would have hated if someone did in that tournament because I just took what was supposed to be like a fun, cool tournament and sort of made it shitty for Zvi. Um, but I just went into a different mode because there were people there who, didn't allow me, or they prevented me from relaxing and just having a good time because I just didn't like them. I didn't like what they stood for. I didn't think they should be there. And the idea that he did eventually win an invitational, and it's great that no one cares about his card at all. But
I actually don't know he had a card.
oh yeah, it's a merfolk. It's
Okay.
a little
Well, that's not important then.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not very good.
Okay.
I can't believe I can't remember the name of it. But yeah, he would he brought out right that day he definitely like brought out the worst in me because I
Yeah.
was like if I just keep winning, Mike's not in and that so
Yeah. Yeah.
uh yeah, yeah, it did and even now, like even somewhat recently, it's just a drag to have to play against the cheaters. It's so much like it's just
Like
mentally
mental
taxing, emotional.
energy,
Yeah,
anguish.
it's
Yeah.
vicious.
You have to be vigilant on guard the whole
So
time. Yeah.
so yeah, it was I think it was we probably were even a little ignorant to how bad it was then. I think that uh I mean even though we did see it happening, like we would see things for a while you weren't allowed to unintentionally draw. I don't know if you knew that. Not a good rule. So like
I did not know that there was a period
there was a
where you
period
could not do
where you
that.
couldn't. Uh,
Okay.
right, you couldn't intentionally draw. I don't know what I just said. Yeah, you were not allowed to ID. So, we went to tournaments where we saw people just sort of like purposely stall out or um, were like not killing. Like they'd obviously agreed to a draw before the match
Hmm.
and we're just gonna like fake a real match. And we did see stuff like that happen. Um, I think we stupidly thought if we just didn't get cheated in our matches and played our best, we'd be able to compete. But in retrospect, that's just not really true. It's like every loss is just like such a big deal, and you really to win a tournament, you just need so much luck, and so many people were just like. That.
Well, what could you have
yeah.
done differently? Because like I don't understand the alternatives.
I mean, well, it, nothing, I guess. Just not tried. Just said I'm not going to bother with this because I can't win. I can't. I'm never
Oh, I see.
like or tried even harder or been more. We could put all our effort into just trying to catch people. Like I don't know. I think but at the time, I think I underestimated how obviously, like I said, I don't know how many people cheated, uh, and I don't know how much they cheated. Um, you know, uh, someone like John might have a better idea because he was pretty young, and I know that the young people confided in each other more. But now that I feel like I kind of understand how like small the edges are and how having a 5% better winning percentage is like a huge deal. Uh, yeah, the people who played honestly
Yeah.
were at a pretty big disadvantage.
That stuff all compounds, right? Whether it's an advantage or
Yeah,
a disadvantage.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and eventually, like, I think we did have influence. They started to take cheating more seriously. I think, Sheldon Menery, who recently passed away, uh, I feel like he was always good about giving me a lot of credit. In some ways, I feel like he remembers a lot of the details better than I do because he was
He
involved because he was a
when I
judge.
talked to Sheldon for that interview, he mentioned you actually
Yeah.
specifically by name. Yeah, when he was a judge.
So yeah, we did just try to like do whatever we could to clean it up. And it seems like things got better, but there's always been cheaters, and it's never really
Yeah.
stopped, and it's just an unfortunate part of Magic. Do get a lot of entertaining stories. Non-Magic players love Magic cheater stories. Like if the Magic cheater stories that are easy to illustrate to other people, I've got a lot of like
Mm-hmm.
entertainment
I mean,
value from
how
those.
outlandish they are, how brazen
Yeah,
they
or just
are,
show
all
like
kinds of stuff.
anything that involves where you can like see someone do like sleight of hand on a YouTube video people love, or
Hmm.
um, yeah, there's stuff like that. So cheaters have given us some some
Some level of
some
entertainment.
level of entertainment to at least make up for like the everything else that's
Yeah.
horrible. But and I know that a lot of the cheating was done by very young people, and I'm not gonna. Some people change. I mean, some people don't. They're just kind of shitbags their whole life. But
Hmm.
I'm sure there's people who cheated when they were 17 and now they're 27 and they're regretted. And I don't judge people necessarily based off that.
Hmm.
But yeah, it just sucks. And the people who
Hmm.
are like 35 years old and cheating at their local store event, I just can't, I just don't even know.
Yeah.
It's just like a mental,
Yeah.
it's just like,
Yeah. There's something like morally or ethically wrong there.
yeah, or it's
Is
an addiction. I don't know. It's a lot. It could be a lot of
pathological.
things. Yeah, but it's not.
Yeah.
But man, it's hard to forgive.
Yeah.